We've spoken about unbiased reporting, being neutral, all of that. That's what journalism is all about. But then we have these platforms. I'm sorry, Pankaj at the back, may I request? Yeah. Then we have these social media platforms where opinion is important. And there's no, it's not bad to express your opinion in today's world. It's seen as a thing that, you have a right to do so. But when it comes to your reporting, do you need to separate it? Is it good? Is it bad? Do we go beyond that? Do we need to relook at the way we used to think about reporting? So this is broadly what I want to understand. Let me start with you, Surabhiji, on this, that it starts from the foundation itself. What is being taught right now? Is it in keeping with what is happening in the market, right? People love to express their opinions. In the college, we're told, look, be neutral, left, right, center, but no, just listen to everybody, but have your own neutral stand. Does that stay relevant?
So very much, Ruhail. Some of my students are here, and in the very first class, we tell them to be very, very objective, very, very balanced in their reporting. What happens, in this polarized news culture, in this media environment in which, news and information, they are very heavily influenced or, characterized by extreme differences, maybe in perspectives or, maybe ideologies or political leanings. And this polarization, it often, results in a very sharp division of the society into distinct ideologies or partisan organizations or groups. And each one of them, they consume news from sources that align with their existing beliefs or their preconceived notions or values or political preferences. So what happens is then a sort of echo chambers are created. So what are echo chambers? Basically, consumers also, they consume news from sources which make them re-believe or reinforce their pre-existing beliefs or notions. So we especially at IIMC, we try our to train our students to whenever they write something, they have to have diverse sources of information when they write something. So cross-checking is very, very important. Fact-checking is very, very important. So we teach them that you will have various sources of information, but you have to decide whether you are taking this information solely from one, one angle or one perspective or one source. So please verify it from various sources and do not let your own biases creep into the information that you are providing to the society.
Absolutely, absolutely. Aditya, your initial comment on this, is it okay if you express yourself in your reporting?
Well, it's absolutely okay to have an opinion first. You cannot escape an opinion. If you're trying to hide really that you don't have an opinion, you're probably lying to the people. You have an opinion on each and every subject, in some ways, more than other. But when reportage is concerned, a journalist needs to take a call. That whether you go by the proponents of ethical reporting, or you go by the pulls and pressures that are involved. These could be organizational stands that are taken. These could be probably political leanings that are there, and a lot of other pulls and pressures. In my life, I've been a journalist for about 15 years now, and I've had, of course, we've reported with Dipankar also very closely on several political issues. But there have been times when there have been immense levels of pulls and pressures, but also biases and attacks that have happened. Where do I start really? I remember that almost a little more than 2 years ago, there was an Indian journalist called Danish Siddiqui, who was killed by the Taliban in Afghanistan. And this was the same Danish Siddiqui who had also covered the COVID-19 pandemic for Reuters. And the kind of attacks that Danish faced, probably because he was from a particular religion, and this was during the pandemic when a lot of people were dying, and there were these funeral pyres, and there are two ways of thinking about it. One is that, of course, there were Western media attacks that were happening on India, and people perhaps in Italy or US or other countries were not looking inwards and not introspecting. But then there were these photographers, not just from the Reuters, but other organizations who were given a task to report the reality. And they were just coming out with the facts out in open. But he faced attacks. And nobody did anything. People went to Getty Images website and said that this each photograph is for 24,000 rupees. But that's like a standard rate for each photograph there. It's not Danish Siddiqui that is earning 24,000 from that particular photograph. And unfortunately, then we saw Danish Siddiqui dying. And it's sad that because I made a documentary on him, I spoke to his family and others, I can say that not just the Indian government, not just the Afghanistan-style government, but the Western governments and Reuters itself, everyone remained silent on it. Nobody demanded justice. Nobody demanded facts. And if you speak to the family, they are more upset than the Taliban or the Indian government or the Western powers with the Reuters. That you have an independent investigation, but you do not release that to the family members who are the first right to know. So there have been several such instances. I have faced attacks during the pandemic as well because I pointed out that in this particular state things were not right, and you get threats, you get intimidated. And one small example before I give the mic to you is about Kashmir as well, where I belong from. And since Surbhiji mentioned about echo chambers, narrative plays a significant role in this. In Kashmir, 15 years ago, we were told there were editorials written, there was reportage on separatism, on so-called freedom fighters, etc., the same ones who are in prison today. And whenever we reported about any killings or their hawala rackets, etc., we were blamed. We were told that you are the culprits and you are trying to scuttle the freedom of expression of these people. And today, it's the other way around completely. So I think we all are guilty. It's not just an individual journalist, but organizations who take a particular ideological leaning, and the masses. And in this previous discussion that happened, panel, I was listening to it, and the question that came in about biases. I think it is about organizations who are taking a particular role, and they put a lot of pressure on journalists. So it is about journalists to take a stand. I made a documentary on Danish Siddiqui. Nobody objected to it. Of course, people may not like it. People may object to it. But here is the truth, and it is for everyone to see. And whatever the media unfortunately reports, there's a lot of criticism of Arnab Goswami that happens, a lot of other editors in Hindi media that happens, rightly or perhaps wrongly. But it is the reflection of the masses. It is the reflection of the society. A joke on a lighter note that my father used to often tell me when I used to work with Arnab, that, why don't you ever advise him that, he's screaming so much all the time, and what's this all about? And then after a week, he used to watch Arnab again. And I used to tell him that, why don't you stop watching it if you don't like it? So unfortunately, this is the society. They may not like it, but they continue to watch it. And the same pulse is picked up by the editors and media organizations, unfortunately. And we see media still evolving in India. Thank you.
I agree with you. I think in a different context, at a different forum, a senior journalist did point out that people would speak, kind of criticize television, but they would watch television, Let me come to you, Dipankar, on this note that bias is okay. Is bias okay as long as your facts are correct? Say you took a stand, you made a documentary, but your facts were right? As long as your facts are right, is it okay to take a stand that you believe in?
So I've worked in a newspaper all my professional career, so I'm going to stick to that. And I think between a newspaper and its reading public, there is a contract. And that contract is basically framed by the pages on which the stories appear. So I think there is a separation between bias and reportage. The opinion pages exist for a reason. If you're appearing on the opinion pages, it is intrinsic that you are expected to write what you think you should be writing. A reporter on the news pages must have his own opinions for sure. But I remember, even in school, there was always this question in debates that is news subjective or news objective? And sure, there is an element of subjectivity in all news. As Sukumar said in the morning, all journalists must have red lines. So those red lines in terms of subjectivity are things like hate crime is wrong, murder is wrong, communalism hopefully is wrong. But you arrive at all of those conclusions in a news story through objective tools of journalism. So you give people the right to respond, you reach out for comment, that entire process basically makes your story stronger. You reach out to the first person in the chain, you get first voices. So that's incredibly important. Number two, I think in terms of bias, I think it's incredibly important for a journalist or a reporter to understand he is not the story. One of the things is that we see this happen more and more, that you seem to be, and I think it's emblematic of a phase where everybody is getting on social media, everybody has a voice, is that you seem to want to be active protagonists in a story, and that's a problem. You can be a protagonist in the story in the sense that you're one of the persons telling it honestly, but you are not the story itself. You're not adding to the story. You shouldn't be adding to a diplomatic push. You shouldn't be taking away from a diplomatic push. You're reporting the diplomatic push. And the moment you do one of these two things, you leave space for, in that story, the people that matter. So the story then centers around the people, the place, the social conditions. It lends itself actually to great writing. If you're not putting your own opinion there, you're most likely using those 200 words to tell the social characteristics of that person, their caste, their gender, where that story is coming from. So the moment you do, I think, these three things, keep yourself away from the story, tell it, use objective metrics, and be honest to the reader that this is a page one news story, therefore it does not have opinion. You want opinion, it's on the edit page. You want sports, it's on the sports page. The moment you're honest with your reader or your viewing public, I think there is a clear separation that begins to exist between bias and reportage, and I think that's actually super key, particularly to print journalism at least.
Absolutely. The reason we have categorized news and we have the different pages. Sneha, your opening remark on this, how do you see this, the need for being impartial and the fact that people really want to listen to what stand you have really taken as a journalist?
Okay. I'll start with an example, and I'll perhaps end my opening remark with just that example. How many of you are familiar with what was happening in Sabrimala? So there was a court order. The court said women can go into Sabrimala against what was the belief at that point that women of certain groups, menstruating or particular age group, should not be going to that temple. Now, once that court order came, of course, it's now back in the court. But when that court order did come, I was on the ground. I and some of my colleagues were women on the ground. So it doesn't matter what I think about it. It doesn't matter. And mind you, I'm from a different religion. This is about a Hindu temple. And it's a very, very sensitive, emotive issue. And a highly polarized issue. People are split in groups. It doesn't matter whether you are husband, wives, father, mothers, whatever. Forget about organizations. You are split on the opinion whether the court order is right or not. In these circumstances, some of us, I won't say just me because I don't want to put myself forward, there are some of us who go there. Difficult circumstances to report. What do I believe in? It doesn't matter. What do I think should happen? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what my organization thinks. Trust me, as a reporter, you have to put your foot down. If your office says you have to do something, you have to say this is what it is. Fight for it because it is your story. At the end of the day, it will be your office's story. This is what your life is. If you are a reporter, if you're a journalist, stand for your stories. It's more important than ever before. So you debate it out, you discuss it out with your editors. I have the privilege of saying that Editors will not give me a line of what to add in that story. It's my job to get it done. So we are there. We have been, I don't want to get into all of that, but yeah, it was not a very pleasant place to report at. There were all kinds of things that happened out there, particularly for women journalists who were reporting there. Why am I saying this? I'm saying it only for the reason, at that time, what mattered? The Constitution mattered, the court mattered, and what the fact is mattered, period. Nothing else mattered. That's where I come from, that's what I believe in, that's the journalism I know.
Thank you. Surbhi, your students are also here. Again, I want to put this in the context of the academic side, You see television and we call it toxic. Somebody said that there are so many talking heads on television, you call it Ravan School of Journalism, whatever. And they are exposed to it. We teach them something, they are experiencing something else. How does it kind of, how do they kind of deal with this? It's a duality it's a conflict, How do you enable, how do you handhold them to look, this is journalism, don't be bothered about it. But there are icons on the other side, which we call called toxic, How do you handhold them that, look, this is not journalism or this is journalism? Do you guide them? Are these conversations happening in education institutions of prestige like yours?
I would say that we would like to train our students, very holistically. We would not tell them only goody-goody things about journalism. I tell them at least, all good and bad things about journalism and media industry as well. So on the one hand, when I talk to them, I brief them what is reporting, what are different beats, how to do crime reporting, how to do court reporting, how to do parliamentary reporting. But at the same time, I also show them the true picture of the media industry today, so that when they enter the media industry, the day they enter, they're not shocked. They should know about what is happening in the media industry, and it is their right. How, media is being corporatized, how it is politicized, who are the owners of media, and how it impacts the, overall, narrations, right? So if brand capital is there, it is there, What is, like, he's from, I think, Hindustan Times. We have strategic partnerships there. So the revenue side of it, the financials, the business models, the editorial policies. In fact, in my latest 2 books, which have been published by Oxford, Indian Media Giants, which I've tried to do case studies on the legacy media houses in India, the Times Group, Hindustan Times, Hindu, Indian Express, Bhaskar, Jagran. I've tried to, do detailed case studies on them, that what are their editorial policies versus what are their business policies. Similarly, in my new book, which has just been released last month, Digital First Entrepreneurial Journalism in India, I've tried to see the digital portals that have, emerged over a period of 2 decades in India. So where is the money coming from? How they are wanting to shift to the subscription-based model, and why? Why don't they want advertiser-based model? Because they say that they want, subscription-based model so that they can write what they want to write, right? So I try and, in fact, all the teachers, we try and do, classes on fact-checking. We try and teach them what is misinformation, what is the difference between misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, what is fake news, and how it is creeping, and how, you have to be objective all the time. You can face problems. Your editors or owners might agree or disagree with you, but as she said, that you have to fight for your own stories, because that ultimately will be published under your byline, and you will make your own credibility also with your, genuine objective stories. So we try and bring everything to academics, good, bad side of media, and also what can come up, envisioning the future. So, thank you.
Wonderful. So, Um, Aditya, again, a journalist told me that, look, if you don't shout on television, if you have a plain news like those graphics, you don't have that, the dramatic graphics and there is no noise, people won't watch in Indian context because we should not be guilty of saying that, look, it's not like BBC clean, the anchor is speaking softly and all of that, No, we should not be guilty of not being that, It's our culture, it's the way we love to have news. Do you think there's an audience that is forcing us that if you don't have this kind of news, which is polarized, which is noisy, we won't watch you, and that's also leading journalists to do that kind of news? Do you think there's a compulsion, an outside force on journalists, on anchors, to be what they don't want to be at times?
I think I'll start by what Surabhiji actually mentioned, and that's the most essential part in TV journalism at least, which is the kind of revenue model you have. And this revenue model directly impacts your journalism, your whatever you do. Of course, you had the TRP controversy also around it. And this revenue model is completely flawed because these are completely based on advertisements that you get. And for advertisements, the channels have to reach out to the people out there, the companies out there, and tell them that you are number one and you are most watched. And how do you do that? So there is BARC that comes into picture, or other agencies who actually, I don't want to speak against them at this forum, but people know what happened. And of course, this TRP system is also jinxed because how do you rate it? The Hindi or the regional watching media is much, much, much larger than the English watching people out there. And there are multiple channels who have been involved in this, kind of a fraud of TRP scam. So it is completely now the ball in the government's court to have a kind of a neutral TRP system, either under the Information and Broadcasting Ministry, or have an independent player out there who does not see any kind of profits coming in from either any channels, media houses, or any of the corporate houses out there. But you are absolutely right. Sometimes, unfortunately, I have to say that screaming is important. That does not justify, unfortunately, what happened probably when Sushant Singh Rajput died. The kind of mockery that we saw on the television. And I'll also highlight, I'm not sure if I should say this, but in a particular channel, the senior editor reached out to the editor-in-chief and said that, we have spoken to the doctor who was involved in the autopsy. And he says that, it isn't a suicide. So the editor-in-chief said, forget it. We won't get the numbers really if we don't go by the, the theories that we are coming out with. So this is the standard that we follow, that you need a lot of masala journalism out there and build in these conspiracy theories so that you have more viewers. Similar was the case when Sridevi had died, and you had those bizarre visuals coming on the screen on television. And unfortunately, looking inwards, because I've spent most of my time in TV journalism, we do not get appropriate training. And this training, I'll speak because I cover terrorism and conflict. Particular conflict training is not given. For instance, what BBC or the New York Times or the AP or AFP would give. And this was clearly visible a year ago when the Russia-Ukraine conflict happened. And it almost became a fish market in Ukraine because each and every channel sent in their 5 to 6 reporters out there because Ukraine wanted their, publicity and narrative. But nobody knew how to, it's just God's grace that nobody actually became a casualty in that entire process. But that kind of a training is not imparted by any of the organizations, at least most of the organizations. So I think we have to look inwards. We are the reflection of the society, but a lot can change if media owners and editors actually take a stand. A lot of difference can happen. Thank you.
Thanks. Dipankar, give me your newsroom, every day, how do you deal with the fact that your stand has to be absolutely, unbiased? What are the practices that you use or, Hindustan Times looks into? What are those metrics that you look at to ensure that news reporting is objective all the time?
Okay. So there's very clear process that happens. You have, in the morning, you will have an edit meeting where the idea is first pitched, formulated. The editor will speak to the reporter, will kind of perhaps sift through the intricacies of that story at that point. So we'll shape the direction of how the reporter looks at the story for the next 6-7 hours. I mean, I think the one good thing that print has over digital or TV is the value of time. You have time for the paper to come out the next day. So in that sense, there's this greater responsibility on you to be correct, more nuanced, more factual. So you've got 6 hours when that happens. It's very important to have an open newsroom and create an atmosphere where there aren't such difficult hierarchies that the reporter finds it very difficult to speak to his superior if there are questions through the day. So I think that nurturing environment is incredibly important. Then at 6 o'clock when that story comes in, that's when the sausage really gets rolled. So you've got to you start going through every word. So you will always ensure that if you're doing something about a government or a party, there's a comment. If the police are saying something, certain things have to be on record. It's not easy. There are only very specific circumstances where you're okay with a completely off-record quote. All of that rigor, eventually, then there is another editor that will sit through it at night. So I know that legacy newsrooms get a lot of heat, and they should, and in some ways it's deserved. But I think also that they are the most rigorous about these processes that happen on a daily basis. So to bring out a newspaper with 20,000 words every day is not small. And there is absolute chaos at night, not because of anything else, but because you want to get things right. You are the repository of what India reads the next day. So in that respect, everything must be bang on. So there are multiple processes that happen. You will also take great pains to make it simpler for readers. So if a story is very complicated, you'll find in newspapers there'll be a little graphic or there'll be a little flow chart that explains what process is happening to you in four pictures, in a bar graph, whatever else. All of that kind of happens on a daily basis, which is what essentially ideally must weed out bias, is the process through which on a daily basis you try and ensure that your reportage is as good as it can get.
Sneha, before I open this to some questions, the same question which I asked Aditya, have you ever felt that at times, a reporter, a journalist has to toe a certain line because the audience wants it, because there's a compulsion that the story, this is the way they love it. Like, we love masala in food, we love masala in news. Has there been a case like that ever in your career? Or do you think at times it does happen to some journalists who are your friends otherwise,
So, I'll be very practical. There are some things which are great masala. So, treat them like great masala. And let it be. Everybody likes masala. No one always wants to eat some hardcore meat or paneer or, Masala is masala, treat it as masala. But treat meat as meat. The two don't meet. At points, they may meet. In some story, they may be light-hearted. That's fine. Why I'm saying, I still remember this was very early days of mine. And there was this very serious, complex story that I was following. And by evening, my boss gets to know that there's this business tycoon's daughter's mega wedding happening in Kerala that I had not informed about. Now, this is very early years of mine, okay? I had filtered it off my radar. I had said, we'll get the visuals for that. It doesn't need my energy. I'm going to spend my energy on some other story. I got it nice and royally that evening because I got rostered for a very simple thing. Why couldn't you do two? Why couldn't you do both the stories? And if you can't do both the stories, why can't you tell us? And we will decide then how to go about it. So those are, why I'm saying this is, listen, you're not a puppet. If you're a journalist, you're not a puppet. But you will have to learn to put your foot down for where it needs to be put down. There could be a cost for it. It's up to you whether you want to bear the cost of it or not. If you are okay with bearing the cost, you would do only certain kinds of things that you're okay with doing, that you will join an organization, you will find your way around or figure out something on your own, of what the stories need to be doing, or you'll exit a place. Otherwise, I do not take this as an excuse that you have to do a story in a particular way because someone tells you or because the audience wants something. It has to be engaging, it has to be exciting, it has to be, I mean, I can't speak in a way that you are not involved with me. I can't say a story, I can't spend a day doing a story and not get you involved in it. That's for me, that's my job to get you involved in what, that's a report. When I say me, I'm not saying me, I'm saying a journalist's job to get you involved in our story. If we don't do that well, it's not done well. But I don't have to sell something to you that is not meant to go in that way. Every person, every individual, every subject has a dignity, and I still believe in our old school journalism rule that dignity must be given to what is deserved.
Great. So we have 10 minutes. Let's open this forum. We have some great, journalists on this side and, practitioners. Any questions? Those who have not asked since morning, let's give them. Okay, please. Okay. You can take a microphone.
Just a second.
Yeah.
Before we can start with the questions, I must request the audience or the people, concerned people who are putting up the questions to kindly not to stray away from the topic of the discussion at hand.
Okay.
Please continue.
Well, I don't have one right now, but I have been provided one gunman because threats have been very frequent, at least in the last 3 to 4 years. Such is life. But I avoided it as much as possible because when I used to stay in Delhi, I was recommended and I tried to avoid it because, it intervenes in your privacy a lot. And of course, you don't know who's watching, even from the government. But unfortunately, I have to keep one, but threats have been very frequent. Thank you.
Right. Let's have one more. Yeah, okay. Okay, the gentleman on the, yes, you. Okay, can we hand them a microphone?
Check.
Hello, sir. My name is Avinav. I am from IIMC, English Journalism Department. Sir, my question is that the loss of credibility to journalism is a lot more credited to revenue models, flawed revenue models. And there is a merit attached to this. I am not going to disagree with this. But there is other part of this as well. The country which is as much diverse as India, there is an audience for everything. Be it Karan Thapar School of Journalism or Suresh Chavanke School of Journalism and everything in between. There is an audience for every type of content. So if we have an audience for every kind of content, be it short form or long form, I have been tried that even that there are some channels who is running the long form videos of 3 to 4 hours and they have 1 billion subscribers. So don't you think that in the end, everything reduced to the people who are sitting in the leadership position, that what choices they make? So everything at the end comes to the choices they make. So I am just asking that what's your opinion about this?
I think that's a very important question that you asked and very well analyzed. Of course, India has a lot of tastes. A big country like ours, we enjoy each and every form of content. But as news professionals or journalists, we have to decide that are we in a profession of reportage and providing just news to the people because people expect us just to report the truth and the facts? Or are we in the business of entertainment where we, suit the kind of agenda or tastes of the people and then, try to tilt towards that kind of journalism or that kind of an idea? We have had songs and dance also happening on the, channels, but I think we've come far from it. We are still developing, evolving. But of course, I agree with you that the final take is of the owner of a corporation, of a media corporation. But unfortunately, in not just in today's times, it's more visible today, but in the past as well, we've had the owners taking a political position and going that way. We've had cases where journalists acted as middlemen. We've had now cases where people outrightly support a particular party or particular government. So yes, it is the owners that should take the responsibility and take a call. But I want to also tell you that it's not just an India phenomena. If you study in deeper detail in US, it's similar and perhaps worse. With CNN, Fox News, both shifting their goalposts and ideology as per whichever administration is in power. Thank you.
Sir, I Asutosh, sir. I am a student of English journalism from IMC, sir. I have a question for Sneha, ma'am. Ma'am, if owner of that media house you belongs to the particular party, or if he or she is an MP or MLA, and the party that he belong or she belong is in power, then how you can choose your course to publish what, and if he or she is forcing you to publish the agenda of particular party, then how as a senior editor you choose what to publish?
So, okay, I'll try and make this very simple. I'll not go into much of theory. I just keep things very, very simple. There are just two ways about it. You go doing your business. If they do not agree to you doing your business, then you either join hands with them or quit. There's no middle path. Basically, you have to stand for what you think is the story. You have to get your facts together. You have to be editorially sound in what you do. Get your reactions together. Get the different players involved in that particular story. If it is about, say, if you're doing a story on corruption of an allegation by X against Y, then you get the different angles to that story, get the reactions from, say, the police or the ED or the MPs, the rivals, and put in a story. See what your editors say. You may have to argue.
So one question.
Well, I believe much like every other profession, this also comes with a choice. You have an option.
As I said,
either
you're not
way.
a puppet, or you're not a. No one has held you by the
If
leash.
ma'am we are entering in that corporation, ma'am, how can
My
we
sincerest
quit?
apologies. I believe one question per person, as we are running on a schedule
You
here.
should get a prize, sir, for asking the maximum questions today. Okay, one more.
I have one question to Dr. Surbi. There are a number of students here.
Your microphone, yeah.
Yeah, your number of students are there. There are two subjects. One is the polarized, and second one, the last one was the rebuilding trust. These all students, they got the boarding pass to board the flight for journalism, learn journalism. So these two subjects will not disturb them.
No, not at all. They'll make them more stronger. Because if you know the realities, it becomes easier to work with that environment which you know about. Because I just don't want to keep them, with the goody-goody things, and, the day when they enter and they realize that whatever ma'am taught was all, not applicable here. So you have to unlearn what you learned. So I want them to learn both the sides.
And tell them to wear the seat belts, don't worry. I think we are out of time, but thank you everyone for joining us on this panel and sharing your thoughts.